Hey, everybody, welcome to the live stream. We've got another one of our series, Where Are They Now? I'm joined by Dr. Sam Ho, one of the rehabilitation physicians here working at Mary Free Bed, and a recent patient of ours who was here this past summer, John Marchiando. Thank you guys so much for joining me for the conversation today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, John, where are you? You are located on the west coast of Michigan, right? In Muskegon, Grand Haven, right?
I'm between Muskegon and Grand Haven. I'm in Norton Shores, actually.
Okay, awesome. And it's been a few months since you've left the hospital. And it's a crazy journey that we're going to jump in here. Dr. Ho was your doctor when you were here at the hospital. And so it's fun to have these conversations, to touch base and see how you're doing since your time and be able to share some of your journey here. So before we get started in the illness, just tell me about where you live, your family, and what do you do for work?
Again, we're in Norton Shores. We've been here since 2018, and I'm married. I've got 3 kids, 5 grandsons. All of them live in Michigan, and I've been married to my wife Becky, who really never left my side throughout this whole ordeal for 32 years.
Oh, awesome! And you travel a lot for work. You work for Cisco, and you started noticing something was a little odd when you were in Vegas for a work trip, right?
Yeah, I started getting sore throat, cough, and my back was bothering me on the flight back, and so I decided that I probably ought to look into that.
And walk us through kind of what happened next.
So I laid down that evening, like Friday evening, and had trouble breathing when I was laying on my left side. So I thought that's probably not a good sign. So I went to urgent care, and they said, "We cannot treat you here. You are way too sick to be here." And they put me in an ambulance and shot me over to the emergency room.
Wow! And do you remember anything else that happens next, or what were you told about that afterwards?
I don't have a lot of memory of that. So I actually sent my boss a text to say, "Hey, I'm in the hospital. I have bilateral pneumonia. Don't know what that really means, but I'll try to be in touch as I can." But I honestly remember nothing from there until I woke up in the middle of July.
That's crazy. And it ended up being 21 days that you were in a medically induced coma. Walk me through some of the list of things that ended up happening to you. And we can have Dr. Ho kind of talk about this as well too, but it was pneumonia, sepsis, toxic shock, kidney and liver failure. Tell me about those.
Well, I still have some of the scars in my groin to prove that I had continuous dialysis at one point. So we have that to think about. But yeah, I was pretty sick. They told me at one point that I was the sickest person that was at the hospital at the time.
And Dr. Ho, you mentioned it to me too when you were working with John. You said he was one sick dude. What was it like when he came to rehabilitation and you first started working with him?
He has something called septic shock syndrome, because what happened is he had a strep infection. I mean, it's not uncommon that people can get that kind of infection. But his problem is basically his whole body is shut down. That's because, septic shock syndrome is like his kidney, everything just stopped. So he was very critical. When I look at his record, I'm glad that I was not involved in the beginning, because that was a disaster. Everything goes wrong. So by the time, he was well cared for in the ICU, they really protected him very well. His admission diagnosis to me is critical illness myopathy. What that means is that because he's so sick, his body is basically stopped. The kidney is not working. He was not in the condition that you can just do dialysis few hours. He was a continued replacement, which means that your body create a lot of toxin. So have those kind of toxins slowly removed continuously. They have to maintain his circulation, because imagine if the motor shut down, the car won't run. Everything goes wrong. So they really care for him very well. The truth is that, he actually turned out quite well because I have taken care of some of the septic shock. In some of my patients, they actually lose their digit and limb because of the poison just stop, and when you don't get blood supply to the finger and so on, your body automatically trying to sacrifice anything that your body think they can sacrifice. So like your kidney, that usually the first one, they just shut down. But then, if your poison is not dialysis out, you die from it. So any of those could have been disaster. I think that one of the picture that you show when he walked out from the hospital, you can see that he didn't have much any meat left when he walked out. So he really, his body just kind of stopped and waste away. So he was really a miracle in coming out from what he was like to what he is now. It's not his time.
Yeah. John, what's it like looking back at some of these photos and seeing you? I mean, you look like a healthy, fit guy. And then like seeing these pictures, it doesn't seem like the same person. Like, how does it feel looking back at these photos?
It's an out-of-body experience, I can tell you. I don't remember any of these, so I've had, I often joke about this. I have one dream that goes for what must have been a month and a half, because that's how long I was out, right? So so I have some pretty wild remembrances there. But yeah, it is definitely an out-of-body experience. I was told that I was down to as little as 114 pounds. And so for me, I'm pretty fit. And I don't know where I would have gotten that if you'd have told me you'd have lost 60 plus pounds. I'd have said, no way.
Yeah. And when you came to Mary Free Bed, so you were at acute care hospital beforehand and you came to Mary Free Bed, this is when people are starting to recover and you're starting to work. But after being in a hospital bed, lying down, not moving for 21 days, I mean, you're kind of starting from square one, right, Dr. Ho?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the fact is that that's what we call critical illness-induced myopathy, because he's not using his muscle. When you don't use the muscle shrink. You have disuse atrophy. So you lose all your muscle mass. Imagine that you have to try to move your limb. So, he basically skin and bone. His muscle is gone. So he has to be in very good physical condition to be able to recover. He was actually in the hospital for a reasonably very short time at Mary Free Bed. So, I always tell my patient, they do the work, I just get paid for it.
And it's like one day in a bed ends up being like 2 or 3 days recovery. Isn't that kind of like a saying that people have for time in a hospital bed and recovery afterwards?
Oh, yeah. His recovery is remarkable. I mean, he has basically good stock. He was healthy before. And, the truth is that not everybody can go through what he went through and come out alive. The critical care is amazing. They really did the most part, the difficult part. I always say when the patient in the med-surg hospital, they were in the sick mode. Mm-hmm. By the time they come to us, they're in the wellness mode. Yeah. So I always tell my patient, just like John, you eat, you sleep, you exercise. That's your full-time job.
Yeah.
So, you maintain the good nutrition, and he, the therapist cannot make him stronger. He has to actively fire those muscles. So that muscle being used get bigger, then they have power. When he had the muscle power, he does not need so many muscle units to do the work. Now your endurance is there. So the fact is that he really have do everything to make himself better.
Yeah, what was that like, and where did you find that inside strength for this? I mean, people would probably just easily just want to give up and say, I'm never going to get back to where I was. But what drove you during those few weeks in rehab?
I guess there's three things I think you have to have in order to survive something that I went through. And one of them is a strong faith, whatever that is, Christian or otherwise, a belief in something bigger. You have to have a determined attitude to get out of there, and you have to have a supportive family. And I had all three of those. Everybody was pulling for me. People were praying for me that I didn't even know. So, those three things I think combined helped me keep pushing to get out of the hospital.
Yeah, and that's crazy. So when you left, so we have some photos of the day that you left, you were still using like a walker. What kind of things were you still working on when you first started to transition and start your recovery at home?
It was all about endurance, trying to make sure that you could climb a flight of stairs without having to stop and get winded. That was a challenge. We have 2 flights of stairs here at home. And so that was something I worked on quite a bit. So all the small things that you take for granted, getting out of bed, that was not a challenge, but again, it was one of those things that you start your day with that and you move forward. I love to lift weights, so I pushed myself and tried to get my hand strength back, which was suffering from most likely that septic shock syndrome that Dr. Ho talked about, because my hands had very little strength when I first got out of the hospital.
Looking back at this all, what was the hardest part of it? The hardest part physically or emotionally for this?
Just getting out of the bed every day, and because what your schedule is, just getting out and trying to be positive. I think that was the hardest part. And as I got better and as I got stronger, the positivity was easier to get to during the day.
What did you think about all the Mary Free Bed team you were working with? The nurses, the therapists, doctors like Dr. Ho?
As I've told everybody that I've talked to about this, I had fantastic treatment, very positive attitudes. I got no problems with, or I had no problems with anybody on the staff. Everybody was willing to help. So I can't say anything bad about anything that went on. It was just a very, very positive experience for me and my family.
And you are back at home. How long after going home did you start getting back to work?
So I left the hospital on August 4th and I started back to work on October 2nd. I was sitting around the house watching TV and I knew that it was probably time to jump back in.
And this is your wife here, it's probably great support for you during all this. You also got some new ink. Tell me about this here.
So as I mentioned earlier, one of the three things I think were key to me getting out was belief and in some greater power in something. So this is just a commemoration of the attitude that I think you have to have in order to progress and be successful in rehab.
And so as we're getting close to wrapping up this interview, Dr. Ho, what do you think it says about John, this fight, this drive, and how can he inspire others in their own journey of recovery?
Well, you see that biceps, where the meat come from? Must be a lot of good food, because you can see when he left the hospital, he's really a skin and bone. To me, in rehab, the most important factor is the patient. When the patient lead the way, everything just happened.
Mm-hmm.
His determination, every day gone is not coming back. But the time he spent,
Mm-hmm.
he really used the best of it. And, the success, I like to take credit, but, it's the patient.
Yeah.
The patient did the work. I just get paid for it.
Well, Dr. Ho, thank you so much for joining us on this interview. John, as we wrap up, is there any advice you'd want to give to somebody? I know we've been talking about these three things, but looking back at it all and looking forward and seeing where you are now, did you surprise yourself? Did you learn anything about yourself during this?
I don't know that I surprised myself necessarily, but I can say that, to anybody that is listening and watching, anything is possible. Given the right belief, given the right determination, and the support that you have around you are keys. And I think I wanted to get out for my grandkids. I wanted to get out for my wife. I wanted to continue living, because my life is probably a little more than half over, but I've still got a lot more I want to do. So that's
Awesome.
that's about all I can say.
Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much. Dr. Ho, thank you so much for joining us on this interview. You've been been on Mary Free Bed on social media, watching and hearing from our Where Are They Now series. Thank you so much for watching. If you need any information about rehabilitation, go to maryfreebed.com. And thanks.